There's a strange kind of justice in the way life works. When someone chooses to hurt you on purpose, when they lie, manipulate, or betray you, they think they've outsmarted you. They think they've won. But what they don't see is that life always keeps score. The universe has its own balance sheet, and nothing goes unnoticed. When you cause real pain to someone who didn't deserve it, that energy doesn't just disappear. It finds its way back to you, often when you least expect it. And that's exactly what's happening to them right now. What they're losing isn't a coincidence. It's the result of what they've done. The human soul can't escape itself. You can lie to everyone around you, but you can't lie to your own heart. The guilt starts building. The anxiety begins to grow, and that quiet peace they once had starts slipping away. On the outside, they might look fine. They'll smile for the camera, post happy pictures, pretend their life is perfect. But underneath all that pretending, something is breaking. Their peace is gone. Their confidence is fading. Every friendship they try to form falls apart. Every plan they make falls to pieces, because when you destroy someone who was good to you, life doesn't bless you afterward. It takes something from you. That's how the universe works. You probably thought they'd never face any real consequences. You might have felt it was unfair. How could someone hurt you and walk away without a scratch? But life doesn't work that way forever. It might take time, but truth always shows up. People who act out of pride, ego, or cruelty eventually trap themselves. They start losing the things they once cared about most: trust, peace, and self-respect. The punishment isn't always something the world can see. It happens inside. Their thoughts turn against them. Their sleep disappears. Their mind becomes their own worst enemy. And no matter how much they try to distract themselves, the past doesn't stay buried. It follows them. They thought hurting you gave them power, but power that comes from pain is never real. Real strength is quiet. It's the strength to walk away without destroying someone's spirit. What they had wasn't strength, it was control. And control always breaks down under the weight of its own arrogance. The truth is, no one gets away with doing wrong. You can delay the consequences, but you can't avoid them. The longer it takes, the harder the fall becomes. You might not see their downfall in public. Life doesn't always hand out justice for everyone to watch. Sometimes it happens in silence. Their friendships fade, their relationships fall apart, their success starts to feel empty. Nothing brings them peace anymore. Because when you harm someone who had a pure heart, you curse yourself with emptiness. You inherit the pain you gave away. That's how life keeps its balance. The saddest part is that most people don't even realize they're burning their own future while trying to hurt you. They think they're punishing you, but in truth, they're destroying themselves. They trade honesty for control, loyalty for power, love for ego, and in the end, they're left with nothing real. They keep searching for peace in new people, in distractions, in fake validation, but nothing fills the emptiness, because peace doesn't come from what you own or who you impress. It comes from who you are, and when who you are is corrupted, no amount of success can save you. Meanwhile, you, the one who was hurt, broken, and doubting yourself, are slowly rebuilding, quietly, steadily. You've walked through the fire, but it didn't destroy you. It refined you. You've learned to see people for who they really are. You've learned what it means to protect your soul. And now you're stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever. You've gained something they've lost: the ability to grow from pain. That's your victory. That's your redemption. What's happening to them isn't your revenge. It's just reality doing its job. When someone betrays goodness, they invite chaos into their life. When they mock loyalty, they attract disloyalty. When they wound love, they lose the ability to receive it. Life mirrors back exactly what we give out, and the reflection they now face is brutal. But don't let their downfall become your focus. You don't need to watch it happen, and you don't need to celebrate it. Just know that balance always returns. You don't have to wish them pain. Their own actions are already doing that. You just have to keep walking forward. Let their loss remind you why you should never sink to their level. Let their emptiness teach you the value of staying true to your heart. Because while they're losing everything by hurting you, you're gaining everything by healing from it. And here's the deeper truth. The moment you stopped trying to make them understand, the moment you stopped needing closure, you took your power back. Their downfall is just the echo of your freedom. They're now living in the shadow of their own choices while you're stepping into the light of your growth. They thought they could destroy you, but all they really did was destroy themselves, because no one wins against a person who chooses to rise instead of hate. So let life handle its own justice. Let time reveal the truth. You just keep becoming the person who turned pain into strength. Because while they're losing everything for hurting you, you're gaining something far more powerful, the peace they'll never know. Life has an order, a rhythm, a moral law that most people never understand until it's too late. When someone lies, cheats, or manipulates, they think the story ends when you walk away. They believe their actions disappear in silence. But life doesn't forget. There's a structure built into reality that doesn't allow cruelty to exist without consequence. Every action sends out an energy, a ripple, and those ripples always come back to where they started. When someone chooses cruelty over compassion, they set in motion their own collapse. It may not happen right away, but it's guaranteed. People often mistake delay for escape. They think because they haven't faced consequences yet, they've beaten the system. But moral cause and effect is patient. It's silent, precise, and unshakable. When they hurt someone who only showed them love, they disturb the very balance that keeps their peace alive. Life keeps a record, not in some magical way, but through the mind and heart. You can't violate your own integrity and still feel whole. You can't destroy trust and expect stability to last. For a while, they might look happy. They'll laugh, post their wins online, surround themselves with new people, act like nothing happened. But deep down, something is cracking. Their peace, their sense of security, their relationships, all start to erode slowly. Life's balance is like gravity. You can't see it, but it's always there. When you go against it, it eventually pulls you down. The arrogance of those who hurt others is that they think they can rewrite truth. They believe if they lie enough or fake enough, they can outrun reality. But truth doesn't bend. It waits. It waits for the moment when everything built on lies starts to fall apart, because lies require energy to maintain, and guilt, shame, and fear become the fuel they spend every day to keep up that act. The more they hide, the heavier it gets. That's how balance works. It doesn't punish through force. It punishes through collapse. The moment someone crosses that moral line, their world begins to lose structure. Inside, they split in two. There's the version they show everyone, confident, smiling, successful. And then there's the version they hide, the one that knows something is very wrong. They start feeling anxious, disconnected, and confused about why nothing feels right anymore. That's the cost of imbalance. When you hurt someone who didn't deserve it, you don't just break them, you break yourself. Their outer world begins to reflect that inner fracture. They stop trusting others because deep down, they know they can't be trusted. They can't form real relationships because they've lost the ability to love without fear. They start attracting the same kind of people they once were: fake, dishonest, manipulative. Life mirrors us back to ourselves. And if what's inside you is broken, what you meet in the world will be chaos. You might look at them and think they got away with it, but they didn't. They're paying for it every single day in ways that can't be seen from the outside. The sleepless nights, the quiet guilt, the constant restlessness, that's justice. Life's justice doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it's silent, but it's always exact. And while they're losing themselves, life is rebuilding you, because the same balance that punishes harm rewards endurance. The universe doesn't waste pain, it transforms it. Your suffering becomes wisdom. Your heartbreak becomes clarity. Your endurance becomes strength. Every betrayal you survived planted a seed of understanding, and that understanding becomes your power. Those who harmed you didn't realize that when they attacked you, they were attacking something sacred: trust, love, compassion. And when you break what's sacred, you don't just lose the person you hurt, you lose yourself. Their downfall has already started. It's written into the imbalance they created. You don't have to wish for it. Just know that it's happening. Quietly, slowly, but surely. That's the law of life. It's final and it's fair. The liar gets trapped in lies. The betrayer becomes paranoid of betrayal. The manipulator gets manipulated. The one who breaks hearts eventually faces a heart they can't mend. That's how life restores its balance. So if you ever wonder whether justice will come, remember this: it already has. Life doesn't forget. It may take time, but it always restores balance. The one who caused you pain isn't free. They live inside the slow decay of their own actions. One day, they'll look around and realize they've lost everything, not because you wished it upon them, but because life did what it always does: it evened the scales. And you, the one who endured the hurt, will rise higher, not because they fell, but because you grew without bitterness. That's what real balance means. It doesn't just punish what's wrong, it uplifts what's right. It rewards honesty, endurance, and patience. So trust that balance, because while they're losing what truly matters for the harm they caused, you're gaining everything they wasted. Guilt is a strange kind of justice. It doesn't arrive like thunder or strike like lightning. It slips in quietly, softly taking hold of the mind, whispering reminders of what was broken. When someone chooses to hurt another person, especially someone who meant them no harm, they think they can just move on. They assume time will erase it. But guilt doesn't fade away. It grows in silence. It waits. It lingers. And when the noise disappears, when the mask falls, guilt becomes the voice they can't silence anymore. People who wound others underestimate the mind's need for peace. They think they can replace conscience with excuses. They tell themselves stories like, "It wasn't that serious. They deserved it. I had no other option." But no lie is powerful enough to bury truth forever. Sooner or later, cracks start to show. A quiet moment, a familiar scent, a random thought, and suddenly they're face to face with what they did. That's guilt. It doesn't forget. It's not punishment from the outside, it's judgment from within. They might look fine from afar, you might see them smiling, living their lives, pretending they've moved on, but you can't fake peace. You can fake joy. You can fake strength, but not peace. Peace demands integrity. It requires a connection between what you are and what you do. When your actions betray that connection, your own soul turns against you. Guilt becomes a silent punishment, heavy, invisible, and relentless. At first, they'll deny it. They'll drown themselves in distractions, noise, new people, fresh routines, fleeting pleasures. They'll keep moving because stillness terrifies them. Stillness means facing themselves. But the mind always circles back to what's unresolved. That's why nights grow longer and sleep feels restless, because guilt doesn't attack under the sun when the world is busy. It comes in the dark, when silence returns and the mind replays the past like a film that won't stop. What makes guilt so powerful is that it works from within. It corrodes their peace, their confidence, and their sense of worth. They begin to feel undeserving of happiness. They can't fully enjoy success because deep inside, they know they don't deserve it. They can't trust love because they know what they did to someone else's love. Every joy becomes shadowed by memory. Every win feels temporary. That's what guilt does. It doesn't destroy instantly, it dissolves slowly. The saddest part is how guilt hides behind pride. They'll act like they don't care. They'll mock, they'll minimize, they'll laugh. But the louder they pretend, the deeper their guilt truly runs. That's the irony of denial. The more they resist it, the stronger it becomes. Truth can't stay buried. It always finds light. The smile turns forced. The laughter starts to sound hollow, and they begin to sense that emptiness they can't explain. That emptiness is the unpaid debt of guilt. You may not see it happening, but it's happening inside them every single day. Guilt works like rust. It eats away in silence until one day, everything collapses. They start losing people. They lose focus. They can't understand why life feels so heavy. But it's not life. It's them. It's the burden of a conscience they betrayed. Guilt isn't only emotional, it's mental. It changes how a person sees the world. It breeds paranoia. They start expecting betrayal from others because they know how easily they betrayed. They stop trusting people because they've proven to themselves that loyalty can be broken. They lose peace because they've made peace impossible. Guilt becomes the lens through which they view life. It's no longer the world that punishes them. It's their own mind. Over time, guilt strips away the armor of ego. The image they work to build crumbles. They realize that no praise, no validation can fix the corruption inside. The attention they chase, the admiration they crave, it all starts to feel empty because guilt keeps whispering, "You don't deserve this." And deep down they know it's true. That's the real power of guilt. It becomes the judge they can't escape, the mirror that never lies. While they wrestle with their guilt, something amazing begins to happen to you. You start healing. You begin rebuilding from truth instead of illusion. You face your pain and grow through it. You rise. You find your peace, not through pretending, but through acceptance. And that peace is something they'll never have, because guilt and peace cannot live in the same heart. Their punishment doesn't come from outside. It grows within. They don't need someone to hold them accountable. Life already is. Guilt is justice written deep within the soul. It's life's way of saying, you can't hurt others without eventually hurting yourself. They thought they were getting away with something, but all they did was lock themselves in a cage made of conscience. And that cage doesn't open until they face their actions. Most never do. They carry the weight year after year, pretending they feel nothing. So when you think they've escaped, remember, they haven't. Their punishment travels with them into every relationship, every new chapter, every quiet moment. Guilt is patient. It waits for silence, for honesty, for the day they stop running. And when that day comes, when they can no longer hide, it will strike hard. The pain they caused, the love they destroyed, the kindness they betrayed, all of it will come back to them. That's when they'll finally see that hurting you was never power. It was the start of their fall. Because guilt never sleeps. It's always awake, always waiting, and it never forgets. They thought they had power over you. They believed that by deceiving, controlling, or breaking you, they proved strength. But that's what ego does. It confuses cruelty for control and manipulation for intelligence. Real strength doesn't come from breaking others. It comes from self-control, from courage, from choosing what's right even when it's hard. The one who hurts others to feel powerful only reveals weakness. And that weakness is what slowly destroys them from the inside. At first, it looks like they're winning. They walk away easily, they act confident, maybe even arrogant. But what they've built is just an illusion, a fragile tower made of pride and lies. False power is always noisy in the beginning. It has to be. It shouts to hide its emptiness. But beneath that noise, it's hollow, and hollow things always fall apart. True strength doesn't crush. It builds. It protects. It lasts. False power feeds on pain. It thrives on control. But when you stop reacting, when you rise instead of breaking, their illusion begins to shatter. Their power was never real. It only existed as long as you believed in it. Once you take back your peace, they lose their grip. And that's when their downfall truly begins. People who manipulate others think they can rewrite truth. They believe they can twist reality to fit their story. But truth isn't something you can bend forever. It snaps back, and when it does, it hits the liar first. The manipulator becomes trapped in their own web. Every connection they build becomes shallow, built on lies, and they start to forget what real feels like. They can't trust anyone because they know what betrayal looks like from the inside. They end up surrounded by people like themselves, empty, self-centered, and untrue. That's not power. That's loneliness dressed as control. The collapse of false power begins quietly, with cracks too small to see. Their charm stops working. The people they once controlled begin to see through them. Their words lose weight because their actions tell the truth. Slowly, they realize that power built on fear never lasts. You can win control over someone's moment, but never their soul. You can win arguments, but not respect. You can force obedience, but never loyalty. There's a strange poetry in how false power destroys itself. It feeds on lies, and lies eventually run out. It depends on control, but control never lasts. When you hurt someone who loved, trusted, or believed in you, you destroy the very ground that gave your power its meaning. Because power without love, without respect, without honesty, what is it really? It's emptiness pretending to be strength, and that emptiness grows until it consumes everything around it. For a while, they'll keep pretending. They'll wear the mask of confidence, of control, of superiority. But deep inside, they'll feel the hollow space expanding. Every attempt to fill it will fail. New people won't heal it. Success won't comfort it, because nothing on the outside can replace what's lost within when integrity dies. That's the curse of false power. It gives you everything you think you want, then slowly takes away everything that makes it worth having. The truth is, false power is built on fear. The fear of being ordinary, of being exposed, of being vulnerable. That fear drives them to control others because they can't control themselves. But control is temporary. It always slips away. And when it does, they're left to face the emptiness they've been running from. That's when the breakdown begins. The arrogance fades, the certainty crumbles. What's left is guilt, confusion, and loneliness. When they see you rising, when they see the very person they tried to destroy standing strong, their illusion begins to collapse because they can't understand how someone they thought was weak could survive their worst. They'll realize that what they called weakness was actually moral strength. They'll see that their so-called power was nothing more than insecurity disguised as dominance. It's a painful awakening, but it's inevitable. False power always collapses because it goes against the truth of human nature. You can't build lasting success on lies. You can't find peace by hurting others. You can't lead while breaking trust. The structure may stand for a while, but it will never last. The foundation is rotten, and when it falls completely. That's what they're facing now, the slow unraveling of the illusion they built. You, on the other hand, are discovering what real power truly is. It's quiet, steady, and grounded. It shows in how you hold your dignity after betrayal. It's in the way you refuse to become like them. It's in your ability to forgive without forgetting, to release without hate, and to rebuild without revenge. That's a kind of power they'll never understand because it can't be faked. It comes from alignment. When your thoughts, actions, and values are in harmony, you create a strength that endures. It earns respect without demanding it. Their false power gave them control for a short time, but your real power gives you peace for a lifetime. That's the ultimate reversal. They gained the illusion of victory, but lost themselves in the process. You lost their approval, but found your truth. That's the difference between their fall and your rise. So don't envy them. Don't wish for revenge. Their punishment is already happening. The lies they told will trap them. The masks they wore will suffocate them. And the people they used will eventually walk away. Because nothing false can survive for long in a world built on truth. Sooner or later, everything returns to its real state. They thought they were powerful when they hurt you, but now they stand powerless before the truth of what they've done. And you, the one who endured their cruelty, now stand free, proof that real strength doesn't need to break others to rise. It survives, grows, and shines until every illusion around it collapses. That's how false power always ends. Not with a roar, but with silence, as truth quietly reclaims everything it once lost. There always comes a moment when life flips the balance, when everything they built on deceit begins to fall apart, and everything you endured begins to blossom. It's almost poetic. While they're losing everything that once defined them, you're slowly reclaiming everything they tried to take away. They thought breaking you would keep you small. They believed if they stripped away your peace, confidence, and worth, you would never stand again. But pain has a strange way of changing people. It burns away illusions and leaves behind something real, something indestructible. That's what's happening now. While they're falling apart, you're becoming whole again. The difference between you and them lies in how you handled suffering. They used pain as a weapon. You used it as a teacher. They ran from guilt and truth while you faced your own darkness with courage. That's what separates a person who grows from one who collapses. You didn't let bitterness own you. You stayed when it hurt. You looked your wounds in the eye and said, "This won't define me." That's strength they'll never understand. Because when people lose everything because of their own cruelty, it's not just punishment, it's revelation. Life shows them who they really are, without the masks, without manipulation, without fake power. They stand in the ruins of their own choices, and for the first time they have to see themselves clearly. That kind of pain runs deeper than any revenge you could wish for, because while you've learned to live with pain and turned it into wisdom, they're being eaten alive by the pain they created. They can't hide behind pride anymore. The people who once believed their lies are starting to see the truth. The relationships they built on control are crumbling. The approval they chased no longer satisfies. They're learning what emptiness truly feels like. It's not silence. It's the absence of peace. They wake up every day searching for something to fill the void, but nothing ever does. That's what happens when your soul goes bankrupt. You, on the other hand, are starting to feel lighter. Slowly, the weight that once crushed you is lifting. You're no longer the same person who was broken by betrayal. You've rebuilt yourself from within. You've realized that your worth doesn't depend on how others treat you. It depends on how you rise after they fail you. That lesson alone is more powerful than anything they'll ever learn. Because now you understand what they never did. Pain, when faced with courage, becomes power. They're losing their peace, their respect, their relationships, and you're gaining clarity, self-respect, and strength. That's how life restores balance. You don't need to chase justice. It unfolds naturally. Every lie they told about you, every cruel act, every manipulation, they're now facing it in another form. The friends they used are turning away. The love they took for granted is gone. The stability they mocked you for wanting, they're craving it now. And life isn't giving it back easily, because what they lost wasn't just material, it was moral. People like that never understand that the greatest loss isn't money, fame, or reputation. It's peace. Once peace is gone, everything else loses its meaning. You can't buy rest for a guilty heart. You can't build joy on broken integrity. They'll learn that the hard way. And while they learn through pain, you'll keep growing through purpose. You've become stronger because you didn't choose hate. You learned to walk alone, to find comfort in silence, to trust that healing is more powerful than revenge. That choice changed everything. That's why you're rising. Every time you refused to lower yourself, every time you chose patience instead of anger, life noticed. Those small, quiet choices built a strength they'll never have, because power born from revenge fades, but power born from truth lasts forever. You faced your wounds head on and said, "This won't define me." That kind of strength is something they will never truly understand. You see, when people lose everything because of their own cruelty, it's not just punishment, it's exposure. Life is uncovering who they really are. Without the masks, without the games, without the fake power, they're left standing in the ruins of their own actions. And for the first time, they're forced to see themselves clearly. That's a kind of pain far deeper than any revenge you could ever imagine, because while you've learned to live with pain and turn it into wisdom, they're being consumed by the very pain they created. They can no longer hide behind their pride. The people who once believed their lies are beginning to see the truth. The connections they built on control are breaking apart. The approval they chased so desperately isn't enough anymore. They're finally discovering what emptiness really feels like. It isn't quiet. It's the absence of peace. They wake up every morning searching for something to fill the void, but nothing works. That's what happens when the soul runs empty. You, on the other hand, are beginning to feel lighter again. Slowly, the weight that once crushed you is lifting. You're no longer the same person who was shattered by betrayal. You've rebuilt yourself from the inside out. You've learned that your worth doesn't depend on how others treat you. It depends on how you rise after they fail you. That truth alone is more powerful than anything they'll ever understand, because now you know something they never did. Pain, when faced with courage, transforms into power. They're losing their peace, their respect, their relationships, and you're gaining clarity, confidence, and strength. That's how life brings balance. You don't need to chase justice. It arrives on its own. Every lie they told, every cruel action, every manipulation, they're now meeting it in different forms. The friends they once used are turning away. The love they took for granted has disappeared. The stability they mocked you for wanting, they crave it now. And life isn't handing it back easily, because what they lost wasn't just external, it was moral. People like that never realize that the real loss isn't wealth, attention, or reputation. It's peace. Once peace is gone, everything else becomes empty. You can't buy sleep for a restless mind. You can't build joy on broken integrity. They'll come to understand that the hard way. And while they're learning through pain, you'll keep growing through purpose. You've become stronger because you refuse to let hate consume you. You learn to walk alone, to find calm in silence, to believe that healing matters more than revenge. That choice changed everything. That's why you're rising. Every time you refuse to fall to their level, every time you chose patience over retaliation, life took notice. Those small, quiet choices built a strength they'll never possess, because power born from revenge fades away, but power born from truth lasts forever. Hey ladies, welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm so happy you wandered into this space. Settle in, get cozy, pour yourself a glass of wine, maybe brew a soothing cup of tea, or honestly grab both if it's been that kind of week. Because today's topic is playful, flirty, at just the right amount of bold. It might even shift how you see your own natural magnetic charm as a woman. Here's the thing. When most people hear the word sexy, their minds instantly jump to cliches. Tight dresses, bright red lipstick, and that slow motion strut like you're in some luxury perfume commercial. But that's not what we're doing today. No, what we're tapping into is a deeper, truer type of attraction, real sexiness. The kind that actually draws men in is subtle. It lives in the small, unspoken moments. It's the things you do without even thinking. And that's what makes it incredibly powerful. So today I'm sharing 7 unexpectedly sexy things women do that spark men's attention without even trying. And no, these aren't tricks or strategies. These are genuine, natural ways you show up that completely catch men off guard and make them think, whoa, she's different. I need to know more. Whether you're out there dating in a relationship or just curious about how your vibe is affecting people around you, this is for you. And honestly, a few of these might surprise you. You may find yourself thinking, wait, that's attractive to men? And yes, it is. Let's dive in. You want to know what really makes a woman stand out in today's noisy, fast-paced world? It's her ease with silence. And no, I don't mean the awkward kind where you're scrolling on your phone just to avoid eye contact. We've all been there. But that's not the silence. I'm talking about a kind of quiet that's full of presence, a calm that doesn't come from doubt, but from confidence. It's that moment where she doesn't feel the need to fill the air with nervous giggles, endless chatter, or punchline after punchline just to keep things light. Instead, she settles into the stillness. She remains calm. She lets the silence do the talking, and trust me, it does. There's something incredibly captivating about a woman who doesn't rush to speak when a guy says something, and she doesn't jump in with a response, but instead maintains eye contact, takes a slow sip of her drink, and lets that pause hang in the air. That's a power move, that quiet moment. It builds interest. It creates a kind of tension. It's completely irresistible. It says, I don't have to prove I'm worth your time. I already know I am. Most people talk just to fill the space, but a woman who's confident in herself listens to connect. She's not scared of a silent beat in the conversation because she knows her value. Even in stillness, her pause isn't withdrawal. It's her claiming space. And men feel that they may not say it out loud, but they sense it. It pulls them in physically, emotionally, that grounded energy. It's unforgettable. It doesn't scream for attention. It draws you in with quiet certainty. I'm not here to chase you. I'm watching to see if you're the right match for me. And here's what makes it even more powerful. It doesn't come across as cold or distant, actually. It feels cinematic, like she's creating the scene while he's still catching up to her pace. And that's not just attractive, that's mesmerizing. True connection isn't formed through constant talking. It comes from the intention behind what you say. And when you give a man that space, that breath of stillness, you stop being background noise and become the moment he can't get out of his head. Then there's this tiny moment, something quick, maybe even unnoticed by you, but to him it's electric. It's the hair flip. Now, before you roll your eyes thinking that's what turns guys on, hear me out. I'm not talking about the dramatic movie scene flip that looks like it belongs in a shampoo ad. I mean the natural kind. The one you don't even know you're doing. Maybe you're laughing at something and absent-mindedly tuck your hair behind your ear, or maybe you're glancing down at your phone and casually toss your hair over your shoulder. That little action right there is pure gold because it's not rehearsed, it's not forced, it's effortless. That's why it's powerful. Men notice that flick, that simple motion. Because it feels genuine, it shows comfort, femininity, and a sense of ease in your body. And in a world that's so obsessed with staged moments and filters, those unedited gestures stand out. It's not about the hair itself, It's about the feeling behind it. It says, I'm fully at ease with myself. That natural confidence is magnetic, and half the time it's not even about catching his attention. It's about you just existing, being in your flow, and ironically, that's what draws him in more than anything else. Someone who isn't even trying, but leaves a mark. Anyway, that tiny flick, that easy tuck, it catches the eye without begging for it. It carries a softness that lingers, and no, most guys won't go, wow, that was the most graceful hair move ever. But they feel it, it sticks, it replays in their minds, even if they don't know why. You don't have to master some perfect technique. You just have to be you. Because in those real relaxed moments, that's where your true magic shows. Now let's chat about something seriously overlooked, your voice. And no, I'm not about to tell you to talk like you're in some noir film or read poetry like you're in a romantic drama. That's not what this is about. I'm talking about that soft, subtle, slightly deeper tone that women naturally shift into when they're present in the moment. It's not staged, it's not a role, it's just real. And to men, it's magnetic. Imagine this. You're deep in conversation, maybe there's some playful back and forth, maybe things are getting a little flirty and your voice drops just a bit, not dramatically, just enough to shift into this calm, warm rhythm that quietly says, I'm tuned into you, this moment counts. That change in tone does something. It adds closeness, it builds tension. It's like opening a window with nothing but your energy. And the wild part is you don't even realize you're doing it half the time. It's the voice you slip into when you're being genuine, when you're relaxed, curious, or really into what you're saying. And it's not about trying to be seductive. It's about being fully present. Your voice stops being just about sound and becomes about feeling. And that feeling, that's what they remember. It's not just what you say, it's how it made them feel. A voice that holds calmness, warmth, and that slight playfulness grabs a man's attention like silk. It slows things down. Even in a noisy room, it can create an invisible bubble. Between you two, a quiet signal that says, you have my attention. So never underestimate the way your tone affects a space or a man. That warmth, that intention, it draws people in. And not in a flashy come here way, but in a gentle, you're safe with me, I'm centered kind of way. And believe me, they notice. Another thing that's sneakily sexy, a woman who actually enjoys being with herself. She walks into a space not looking for approval, but simply vibing in her own world. She grins to herself. She's not buried in her phone. She's just soaking in the moment. And that quiet peace with herself, that self-trust is stunning. Because real sex appeal isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the most grounded. And instead of matching his energy or speaking louder just to be noticed, she dials it down just a notch. Not enough to seem distant, just enough to make him lean in to hear her. And that right there is the charm. You're not shouting to be heard. You're drawing him into your world. There's something personal and captivating about a woman who knows how to adjust her energy when you slightly soften your voice or your words. It builds a private space, like a soft echo chamber, only meant for him. And that closeness creates connection faster than people realize. You're not trying to seduce him with flashy lines. You're inviting him to slow down and connect through your presence. And your words, your voice is an incredibly underestimated tool. It's like music. Some women speak in this rhythmic, thoughtful tone that makes a man stop and pay attention. He's not just hearing you, he's experiencing you. And let's be honest here. There's something wildly attractive about a woman who's not putting on a performance. She's not being loud or dramatic for attention. She's calm, maybe a little cheeky, with a layer of mystery in her words. And that tone, that slight intentional shift, it stays with him long after the talk is over. The secret isn't the lines, it's how you say them. The most confident women don't need to talk loudly. They walk into a room and speak with such calm clarity that people automatically want to listen, because when your voice feels like an invitation rather than a broadcast, he has a reason to stay close. let's be real for a second. Most men aren't walking around getting showered with meaningful compliments. The average guy could probably count on one hand the number of heartfelt things someone has said to him this year, and maybe half of those came from his mom. So when a woman gives him a compliment, especially one he never saw coming, it hits different. It doesn't just land, it leaves a mark. And the best part is it doesn't need to be a huge emotional speech or something poetic usually. It's the little unexpected ones that stay with them, because most guys are used to hearing the basics. You got nice eyes, or you look good in that shirt. Those are fine, but they're also common. There's something about the way your mind works. It's genuinely attractive. Or maybe it's the calm, grounded energy you bring that makes everyone around you feel at ease. That's the kind of thing that grabs his attention. Why? Because it tells him you're not just noticing him, you're seeing what's underneath. That sort of attention is rare. It draws people in. Just like women, men want to feel recognized. They want to know they bring more to the table than their looks, their car, or their style. When you notice things like his kindness, his dry humor, his quiet confidence, or how attentively he listens, that leaves a mark. It makes him feel respected, not just admired for his appearance. And here's the twist. Feeling truly appreciated is one of the most irresistible emotions someone can experience. Let's talk about how you say it too. Tone is everything. It's not about throwing compliments around like confetti. It's about letting it land naturally with warmth and maybe a hint of playful teasing. A simple, wow, that was surprisingly deep. Who knew you had layers? Said with a smile or a cheeky look. Game over. It's not just the words. It's the surprise, the tone, the realness. A compliment that feels earned and unexpected, that's what hits the heart. That's what makes a man see you differently, not just as someone who looks good, but as someone who quietly made space in his thoughts. Now imagine this. You're across from a woman at a dinner table, or maybe side by side in a cozy cafe. Nothing overly dramatic is happening, just a simple conversation. But as she talks, your focus shifts, not away from her, but deeper into her. You notice the way her fingers glide along the rim of her cup, or how her hand brushes the table softly. Maybe the slow, almost lazy way she tucks her hair back. It's all part of her rhythm, her presence. And then she laughs. Not a shy giggle, but a real, open, joyful laugh that comes straight from her chest. That sound says, I'm not here to impress, I'm just here. And trust me, that kind of joy, that's magnetic. Because when someone genuinely enjoys themselves, it's contagious. There's more, too. Laughter breaks walls down. It eases the vibe. So when a woman lets herself laugh fully without worrying how she looks or sounds, it gives him permission to do the same. Suddenly, he's relaxed. He's not trying to say the perfect thing. He's just in the moment, laughing with her. And in that moment, something clicks. A real connection starts forming, and it all began with her freedom to simply laugh. Don't downplay your laugh. Don't shrink it. Don't hide it behind your hand like your happiness is too much. Let it be loud. Let it fill the room. Let it be heard. Because a full, honest laugh is the sound of someone completely in tune with herself. And that's unforgettable. It's not about putting on a show. It's about showing up as a woman who values her own joy. Someone who sees the little things, who can turn a glance into something more, a smile into a conversation, a quiet sentence into a memory. That's what sticks with someone. Those small moments, the teasing tone, the brush of your fingers, the compliment that lingers, the laughter that echoes. That's what makes you stay in his thoughts. That's what makes you unforgettable. And just as beautiful as you are when you laugh with all of yourself, you become not just attractive, you become unforgettable. Think about eye contact. There's everyday eye contact, and then there's that extra moment, that pause, that's just slightly longer than usual. I'm not talking about a stare down or something uncomfortable. I mean that lingering gaze, the kind that lasts a second longer, just enough to make everything shift. That pause doesn't just say, I see you. It declares, I see you, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm letting you feel it. That right there, that kind of look, makes a man stop in his tracks, because holding eye contact like that, it's powerful. It says more than words ever could. When a woman keeps his gaze, especially with a playful spark in her eye or a soft, knowing smile, it creates instant tension. It's like something is being said in silence. Most people look away too quickly. We get nervous or worried about sending the wrong message. But that 1 second when she doesn't look away, that's where the magic is. That's when he starts wondering, was that a flirt? Did I just imagine that? What was that? And suddenly, she's not just someone he noticed. She's someone he's drawn to, someone who now lives in his curiosity. The best part? It's not about being overly bold. It's about being intentional. A confident woman knows the power of a well-placed look. She doesn't give it away lightly, but when she chooses to hold that moment just a little longer, it creates a spark that stays in the air like a quiet charge. She doesn't need to shout. She's not chasing attention, but the way she walks, the way she sits, the way her eyes settle on someone, it says everything. Her whole presence quietly says, I know who I am, and that makes people notice. So the next time you enter a room, a coffee shop, a meeting, even just your living room, remember, you don't have to shrink to fit the space. You can let your energy be felt. You don't need to speak loudly to be heard. Your confidence, your quiet magnetism, it speaks first. A woman who knows her worth doesn't chase attention. She naturally draws it in. She doesn't have to try harder. She simply has to be rooted in her own essence. She stands in her own light. And because of that, she doesn't just spark interest, she captivates body, mind, and soul. And here's the amazing thing. You don't need to change who you are. You don't need lines, tricks, or some scripted version of yourself. You don't need to act sexy. You don't need to try at all. What you really need is to stop hiding the parts of you that already glow. Because when you allow that natural confidence, joy, and depth to shine, even in small, everyday moments, you become something unforgettable. And the man lucky enough to see that, he realizes he's not just looking at someone beautiful. He's seeing someone who moves him in ways he can't quite explain, someone who lingers in his thoughts, someone he can't forget. Now I want to hear from you. Out of all these subtle, sexy behaviors, which one do you find yourself doing without even noticing? Or is there one you're curious to try out more? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I absolutely love hearing your stories and reflections. And if this video gave you a spark, a little more confidence, a little curiosity, or just made you smile, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and send this to a friend who might need a reminder of just how magnetic she truly is. Always remember, you don't need to be louder or bolder or more anything. You just need to be fully and completely you. Because when you embrace that, you don't just become sexy, you become unforgettable. They're the ones left in disbelief, shocked that the person they once thought was harmless was actually 10 steps ahead, shocked that the one they laughed at turned out to be the one they could never defeat. That's what happens when people play dirty against someone who doesn't act from ego but from clarity. Because you weren't playing for validation, you were playing for peace. And that difference in motive changes everything. When you move from peace, you aren't desperate, you don't chase. You don't feel the need to prove anything. You just move with quiet certainty. You let your actions, your calmness, and your energy speak louder than your words. That's what drove them crazy. They wanted a reaction. They wanted drama. They wanted you to break, but you didn't. You remained calm. And that calm became their biggest fear. Because now, every time they see you thriving, they're reminded that their entire plan failed. Their tricks didn't destroy you. They exposed you. They revealed who you truly are and at the same time showed who they really were. And here's the deeper truth. The so-called innocent ones, the genuine, kind, and empathetic people, should never be underestimated. They've endured more pain than most. They've been betrayed, misread, and taken advantage of. But every betrayal sharpened their awareness. Every heartbreak increased their wisdom. Every lie made their intuition stronger. That's how innocence evolves into discernment. And that's what your enemies never expected. They thought they could manipulate you because they assumed you didn't understand darkness, but you did. You've witnessed it closely. You've survived it. You've studied it. And you walked out with an understanding far deeper than theirs. That's why your innocence is dangerous, because it's not naive, it's refined. It's the strength of someone who can see evil clearly, yet still choose not to become it. That's the highest kind of power a person can have. And so now when they look at you, they're not just shocked, they're afraid, because they know they can't predict you anymore, they can't control you or label you. You've outgrown the role they gave you in their small story. You've outgrown the script they tried to trap you in. And the more they see your peace, your growth, and your quiet confidence, the more they understand that your innocence was never weakness. It was simply wisdom in disguise. That's your greatest form of revenge, not through anger, not through payback, but through revelation. The revelation that you were never the fool they imagined. You were the lesson they desperately needed. And now, every time they remember you, that lesson burns, because deep down they know they could have treated you better, they know they underestimated the wrong soul, and they know that while they were wasting time playing games, you were becoming unstoppable. So let them be shocked, let them whisper, let them regret, because truth always returns. And when it does, it speaks louder than every lie, louder than every illusion, louder than every false story they ever told. You looked innocent, but your moves were powerful, not because you were cruel, but because you learned the art of defeating evil without becoming it. You stayed pure while outsmarting the corrupted. And that's what makes you dangerous in a world that only pretends to be good. They mistook your innocence for ignorance. They thought your quiet was fear, your kindness was weakness, your patience was submission. But the truth is, you noticed everything. You saw their tone, their small lies, their fake smiles when they thought they'd gotten away with something. You saw their patterns so clearly that it became predictable. Yet, you stayed silent. Not because you didn't see it, but because you understood that time exposes everything. You didn't need to scream or defend yourself. You just waited, because you knew that eventually their own actions would speak louder than your words ever could. Your innocence was never about being unaware. It was a deliberate choice, a decision to remain good in a world that rewards deceit. You had the emotional intelligence to realize that reacting to evil only pulls you into it. So you didn't. You stayed calm. You let them believe they were winning because you knew their arrogance would destroy them quicker than you ever could. It's easy to fight when provoked. It's hard to stay still when wronged. But your silence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You were giving them the space to hang themselves with their own lies. Most people don't understand that kind of patience. They act from emotion, not clarity. They rush to prove they're right, to reveal the truth instantly. But you learned that truth doesn't need to be rushed. It just needs time. It always surfaces, and when it does, it hits harder than anything said in the heat of the moment. So you waited. You watched, you let them misjudge you, because their underestimation gave you quiet power. That's what makes true innocence so misunderstood. It's not blindness to darkness, it's mastery over it. It's choosing not to let bitterness rewrite who you are. It's refusing to let anger dictate your actions. That's why your peace scares people, because it's proof of your discipline. It's evidence of your strength and self-control. The weak believe aggression means power, but it doesn't. Real power is being capable of destruction and still choosing not to destroy. It's being aware of manipulation and choosing not to mirror it. That's what you did. You didn't let their poison enter your spirit. You let it reveal theirs. They tested you, provoked you, and tried to make you break so they could label you unstable or dramatic. But you gave them nothing. You remained unshaken. You gave them silence where they wanted noise. You gave them peace where they wanted chaos. And that's when they began to lose control. Because manipulators can't function without reaction. Your calm became their confusion. Your stillness became their defeat. You didn't fight them with anger. You fought them with patience. And that patience was strategic. Every time you didn't react, you gained clarity. Every time you stayed still, you saw their weakness more clearly. Their fear, their desperation, their need for control. That's when you realize something. People who manipulate aren't strong. They're terrified. They lie because they can't handle truth. They control because they can't trust. You, on the other hand, embraced truth fully. and that made you powerful in a way they could never understand. There's a deep irony in being underestimated by those who think they're smarter than you. They spend endless time plotting and pretending while you quietly grow, heal, and rise. You weren't trying to win their small games. You were learning the entire system. That's the difference. They chased ego. You pursued understanding. They wanted control. You mastered detachment. That's why, in the end, you won without even having to fight. Your innocence was your armor, not your flaw. It protected your peace, your integrity, and your soul. It allowed you to walk away without guilt, without anger, and without losing yourself. Because what's the point of defeating someone if you have to destroy your own spirit to do it? You understood that real revenge isn't about hurting anyone. It's walking away with your light still intact. It's knowing that your silence will echo in their memory far longer than any words ever could. The people who hurt you can't understand how you stayed so calm. They can't understand how you didn't crumble, how you didn't lash out. That's because they've never known strength without cruelty. They've never seen power without ego. They think you were lucky or foolish. But the truth is, you were wise. You played the long game. You trusted time. You knew that consistency would expose everything, and it did. Now they're the ones who are confused, frustrated, and quietly ashamed. They look at you and wonder how someone so calm, so innocent could become so unreachable. But what they never understood is that your strength didn't grow from bitterness, it grew from clarity. You saw reality for what it truly was. You didn't exaggerate or minimize it. You stayed steady while they sank deeper into their own lies. That's why your silence, your patience, and your restraint became your strongest shields. Being misunderstood hurts. Being called naive when you're simply peaceful can feel insulting. But with time, you realize it's actually a compliment hidden in disguise, because only those who live in constant conflict mistake peace for weakness. Only those who lie see honesty as foolishness. And only those who wander lost believe that stillness is ignorance. The truth is, your innocence saved you. It protected you from turning into the very people who tried to harm you. Yes, they thought you were harmless. They assumed you were unaware. But what they didn't realize is that you were never playing their shallow game. You were mastering your own. You were playing the long game of truth, integrity, and growth. And when truth finally came to light, it didn't just expose them, it elevated you. Because your purity was never a flaw. It was wisdom dressed as kindness. That's what made it powerful. They tried to trigger you because they believed they could control your emotions. They thought if they pressed hard enough, you'd lose your calm, react blindly, and give them the satisfaction of seeing you crumble. But instead, you stayed centered. You didn't shout back, you didn't take their bait, and you refused to be dragged into their chaos. That's where you won, because the moment you stopped mirroring their toxicity, you took away their control. You didn't have to fight their way. You learned the art of calm strength, and that shook them deeply. Manipulative people survive on reactions. They feed off your attention, your confusion, your anger. That's their oxygen. But when you stop giving them that energy, their power fades. You learned that silence is not weakness. It's wisdom in motion. You saw that reacting to every insult or lie only fuels the very behavior you're trying to escape. So you stepped back. You chose peace over drama, dignity over revenge, and that simple decision to stay composed became your greatest victory. They didn't see it coming. They expected a fight, an explosion, a breakdown, but instead they watched themselves unravel. Because when you take your energy away from manipulation, you expose how empty it really is. You let them play their games in silence, and that silence grew unbearable for them. That's what they couldn't stand. The realization that you were no longer reacting, no longer under their spell, no longer accessible to their chaos. The truth is, you didn't need to trick them or outlie them. You outsmarted them with control over yourself. And that's something they'll never understand because they mistake control for dominance. They think power means making others bend. But you showed them that real power is standing firm, not out of ego, but out of peace. You weren't trying to win a contest. You were trying to protect your spirit. You didn't want to match their energy because you knew doing so would only pull you into the same darkness they were drowning in. So you rose above it, and in doing so, you left them powerless. When you refused to react, you tore apart the script they had written for you. They had everything planned. Your outrage, your collapse, your weakness. They saw your anger as proof that they still had influence, but your calmness shattered that illusion. The quieter you became, the louder their desperation grew. You could almost feel their panic when they realized you weren't going to respond. That's the real strength of restraint. It exposes those who depend on chaos. You never stoop to their level, and that's why you won in a way they'll never comprehend. To them, victory means dominance. To you, victory means freedom. They wanted to control your emotions. You learned to master them. They wanted to cloud your perception. You learned to see through illusions. They wanted to trap you in a fight. You simply walked away, letting truth do the work. That's what makes your strength so uncommon. It's quiet, internal, and grounded in awareness. They called your calmness fake, your silence weakness. But that's what people say when they can't shake someone. When you stop engaging with toxicity, you become untouchable. You turn into someone they can't manipulate, and that's terrifying for those who rely on control to feel powerful. They start to doubt their own influence. They lose confidence in their ability to provoke. Eventually, they destroy themselves trying to get a reaction that will never come. You knew that staying composed doesn't mean tolerating injustice. It means being wise enough to choose the right moment and method to act. You understood that emotional reactions give them exactly what they want: words to twist, actions to distort, and weakness to exploit. So you denied them all of that. You learned a different kind of fight, one built on patience and emotional mastery. You chose not to let their poison shape your nature. That's the difference between you and them. You grew while they decayed. Every time they lied, you saw it. Every time they schemed, you noticed. But you didn't let them enjoy watching you break your peace. You weren't fighting to prove them wrong. You were fighting to keep yourself right. That's a higher kind of strength, one based not on shouting or revenge, but on discipline. It takes incredible courage to look someone in the eye who's trying to hurt you and say nothing. Not because you're afraid, but because you understand they've already lost simply by being who they are. They'll never admit it, but your calmness revealed everything. It showed who was truly in control. They believed they had power because they could make others react. But when they couldn't move you, they saw something that scared them. Someone who doesn't play emotional games, someone who isn't afraid of silence, someone who doesn't need validation. That realization cut deeper than any argument could, because manipulators can't survive without drama, and your calm suffocated them. Now they call you distant, cold, or calculating, because it's easier than admitting they lost control. But the truth is, you've simply learned emotional intelligence. You've learned not to let your peace depend on someone else's behavior. You discovered that reacting to evil only strengthens it, and that's something they can't compete with. They can't manipulate someone who doesn't need approval. They can't control someone who no longer craves validation. You stopped feeding their ego, and their power crumbled. The more you grew in self-control, the less grip they had. You started to see their games not as clever, but as sad. You stopped feeling anger and started feeling pity. And that shift was the moment you fully reclaimed your freedom. You realized that you can't stop people from lying or playing games, but you can stop them from touching your peace. That realization is liberation. You defeated them without lowering yourself because you understood something simple yet deep. You don't overcome darkness by becoming dark. You overcome it by refusing to let it enter your spirit. You stayed true to who you are, and that truth became your power. You didn't destroy them through revenge. You destroyed them by growing beyond their reach. Now, every time they see you, they see the calm they couldn't shake, the dignity they couldn't damage, and the strength they'll never understand. That's the quiet kind of victory. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't seek validation. It speaks softly through peace. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to prove anything. You simply became untouchable, and that's something no manipulator will ever be able to defeat. Arrogance blinds people, but your humility opened your eyes. While they were busy trying to control others, you mastered yourself, and that's the greatest power of all. It makes people believe they are untouchable, that they can shape outcomes, and that their cleverness will always protect them. Those who tried to play you thought they were wiser, sharper, and more strategic. They believed their lies were too smooth to be caught, their manipulation too subtle to be revealed. They assumed your calmness meant you were innocent, that you would never see through their false masks. But arrogance always carries within it the seed of its own downfall. It convinces people to underestimate the very ones who are quietly observing and remembering every detail. That's exactly what happened. Their pride blinded them, and your silence became the mirror that showed them exactly who they were. You didn't need to set traps for them. You didn't have to plan revenge. Their ego did the work for you. Arrogance always exposes itself because those who carry it believe they're too smart to be caught. They talk too much, they push too far, and they think their charm can hide their corruption. But when you walk with integrity and steadiness, their mask starts to break apart. Because deception requires effort to maintain, but truth stands effortlessly. You didn't have to chase justice. You just had to stay steady and patient. Over time, their lies started to clash with each other. Their behavior became inconsistent, and slowly, people began to notice what you had known all along. You simply allowed their arrogance to bury itself. That's the strange thing about those who think they're above consequences. They believe they can keep manipulating others forever, but the truth always catches up. It might take months or even years, but it never misses its mark. You understood this well. That's why you didn't waste your strength fighting them head on. You already knew arrogance is its own punishment. It blinds people so deeply that they can't even see the walls closing in on them. They keep acting reckless, believing they still control everything, unaware that each lie adds another brick to the cage they're building around themselves. You watched them with quiet understanding. You saw the cracks forming while they still thought they were fooling everyone. You noticed how their stories began to conflict, how their confidence started to slip, how the very people they tried so hard to impress started to doubt them. You didn't gloat. You didn't say, "I told you so." You simply knew this ending was unavoidable, because no one escapes truth forever. Truth may rest, but it never dies. Their arrogance became their own undoing, not only because they were deceitful, but because they truly believed they could avoid the cost of their deceit. They became addicted to the illusion of being superior. They needed to feel smarter, stronger, and more in control than everyone else. That addiction made them take bigger risks, tell bigger lies, and underestimate people they shouldn't have. That's the hidden danger of arrogance. It's not just blindness, it's self-destruction pretending to be confidence. While they were busy building their image, you were mastering your calm. They were performing. You were observing. They were talking endlessly. You were listening quietly. They chased temporary praise while you aligned yourself with truth. That difference determines who endures, because arrogance burns bright but short. It's powered by ego, not endurance. Integrity, however, is patient. It needs no audience, no applause. It waits, and in time it outlives every lie. They thought your silence meant defeat, but your silence was your power. You didn't waste time defending yourself to people determined to misunderstand you. You let action speak, and you let time reveal what words never could. Arrogant people forget one simple fact. Time is the most honest judge. It remembers everything, exposes everything. It doesn't need witnesses, it just needs patience. And patience is something you mastered. Eventually, their arrogance began turning against them. The same overconfidence that once made them bold started making them careless. They slipped up in their lies. They started contradicting themselves. The people who once supported them began to question, and each time they tried to fix their image, they only made it worse, because arrogance doesn't know how to apologize. It only knows how to double down. You didn't have to say a word. You simply watched their fall happen naturally, and the irony was clear. The very traits they mocked in you, your calmness, your humility, your restraint, were the ones that protected you. They thought humility made you weak, but humility made you strong. It allowed you to keep learning, growing, adapting. Meanwhile, their arrogance trapped them in their illusion. They couldn't evolve because they were too proud to admit they needed to. That's how arrogance destroys people, not by punishment from the outside, but by rot from within. It blocks learning, it blinds perception, it locks people in a fantasy of superiority. You never had to wish them harm. Life simply gave them what they had been running from: truth. And truth, when it arrives, is merciless. It doesn't just reveal lies, it shatters the liar. It strips away the false control they once held and leaves behind confusion, bitterness, and shame. Their arrogance collapsed on itself. They became haunted by the realization that they were never as powerful or as clever as they thought. Meanwhile, you stayed grounded. You didn't celebrate their fall. You simply moved on. You didn't need revenge because you had wisdom. You didn't need to prove them wrong because time already had. And that's the quiet victory that comes when you choose truth. You don't have to chase justice. It finds you. It might take time, but it never fails. Those who underestimated you will learn that arrogance is costly. It destroys relationships, reputations, and peace of mind. And the most painful part for them is realizing that the person they mocked for being too kind, too patient, or too naive was the only one who saw things clearly. That truth burns because it cannot be undone. They cannot rewrite the past, nor can they escape the mirror now showing them their own foolishness. So yes, their arrogance became their downfall. They handed you victory without realizing it, because in trying to prove they were superior, they revealed how insecure they truly were. You didn't have to fight dirty. You didn't have to lower yourself. You just stayed still, and time took care of the rest. That's the real power, winning not through aggression, but through truth. And that's what they'll never understand. You didn't defeat them with tricks, you defeated them with patience, and patience guided by wisdom always outlasts arrogance. They never imagined that the quiet one was the one who saw everything. They thought innocence meant blindness. They thought softness meant weakness. But they forgot something very important about people who stay silent. They observe deeply. The ones who don't rush to speak are the ones who truly listen, study, and understand. And when the time comes, their clarity is powerful, sometimes frightening. The truth is, you weren't naive. You were simply watching, learning, and calculating in silence while they exposed themselves through their arrogance. That's the beauty and danger of appearing harmless. When people assume you're harmless, they reveal their true selves. They lower their guard, they speak without caution, and they expose their jealousy, lies, and schemes. And you, behind your quiet smile, see it all. You don't interrupt, you don't warn them. You simply take mental notes, piece by piece, until the full truth stands clear before you, the truth about who they really are. What they believed was manipulation was actually exposure. They thought they were leading you, but in reality, they were burying themselves with every deceitful word and every arrogant smile. People misunderstand silence. They think silence means ignorance, but silence often means awareness beyond their understanding. You weren't quiet because you didn't know. You were quiet because you knew enough not to waste energy proving it. And that's the difference between arrogance and awareness. Arrogance shouts. Awareness watches. Arrogance pretends. Awareness understands. Arrogance collapses under its own noise. Awareness stands steady, calm, and timeless. In the end, arrogance always destroys itself, while truth simply waits for the noise to fade, because it always does.